Yeah, I can't stand in front of a podium. But again, I would fall off the stage. But you know what? When I was asked to be the keynote speaker for this event, I thought, well, I mean, I'm very honored. And the reason is because, and I've always said, Steve, easy guy. Sit it? Okay, sit it. 27 years of providing resources for parents and kids with disabilities, for the community. That's a long run. It's a long run, and they've helped hundreds, if not thousands, of parents and families and kids with disabilities. And they asked me, I was like, I'm not worthy. But I'm going to tell you why I'm here. I'm coming here as much as a parent of two children with disabilities as I am a professor or a researcher. Now, don't get me wrong, I was a special ed teacher for years. I'm a professor in college. Yeah, I mean, I'm a doctor, but I can't, I have no practical skills. But most importantly, I'm a parent who raised, I have 4 kids, and 2 of them have disabilities, and 2 of them were on IEPs throughout their whole education, starting in early childhood, and that's really what I want to focus on that. But then again, I will drift back into what do we know, what is best practice, and so forth. But I want that to be the hinge that connects us, because we've all gone through, or we're going through, something that is very unique in the world of parenting, and that is raising a child or children with disabilities. Okay, first of all, ever feel like this when it comes to your child's education? I want to give a couple stories. You want me to stop? You want me to go home?
I'm sorry for the interruption. Si alguien necesita traducción, tienen que pasar por unos audífonos, por favor, ¿ok? Si acaso necesitan la traducción.
Bueno, yo puedo hablar español. One year ago, I went to an IEP meeting. This was supposed to be the meeting to help organize my daughter's last couple of years in public school. And the idea being, we're going to start to look forward. Anybody been through this? Where it's like, what happens post public school? And I get to the meeting, and I'm with my daughter, and they go around the room and essentially tell me that there's no way that she's going to graduate. They just went over, failing grades, no credit, all these things that I really wasn't aware of. And my daughter, so here she is, 16 years old, thinking she's going to a meeting where we're going to plan her future. But instead, we're going from one person to the next, saying, you ain't graduating, kid. You're so far behind. And first of all, I thought, isn't that the job of special education, and not to let kids get that far behind? So I made that lobby. I was starting to get angry. Anybody watch Vikings? Ragnar. Oops. I looked at her, and I just watched her doing this. Anybody see your kid just sort of sink? And her eyes, I mean, just like this, when a child is disappointed, sometimes it's in their face, and their muscles, just sort of sag. And I just watched her. She was being systematically destroyed. And she walked out of the meeting going, okay, that's it. I'm never going to graduate. I'm never going to go to college. I don't care. I'm going to drop out and go. I decided I was going to do it. Because, one of the things about the situation, okay, I always thought that maybe I had a little bit of an advantage. Because, it's like I have a doctorate in special ed. That's what I do, they're not going to mess with me. Yeah, I think so. So I decided, due process. I'm getting lawyers now. But yeah, I'm going to threaten. I'm going to get some more lawyers, and we're going to come down, and we're going to, destroy, and we'll now be victorious. And I was telling my little plan to my daughter, and she had the wherewithal to see the bigger picture. And she stopped me. Dad, don't do that. And I was like, I'm veins in my teeth. Wow. I said, come on, let's just let it go. I mean, let's not start a new war. Let's, start to. Of course, she didn't say it in such, she was going, Dad, stop! Come on, you're embarrassing me. What's wrong with you? Here it is. In case you're looking. So I came up. So anyway, what I want to do is right now, as an kind of introduction, is talk about some things that, upon reflection, and also things, I learned, but also things that I could have done better. And one of them is getting to this first point. Raising kids with disabilities is hard. Any kid with a disability, any type of disability. That's what we're here for. Here we are, parents of kids with disabilities, all types. All types. And when we are sensitive to each other, and I know, we tend to go into little camps, don't we? We got kids, autism, the ADHD, we get into little camps. But what is really critical is, as parents, we recognize that each one of us is going through a unique experience, a difficult experience, regardless of what the disability is called. And I have a nice example, because two of my kids have disabilities and the other two don't. Yeah, the two that have disabilities, that's challenging, that's hard. The two that don't, it's like, oh, they're an Eagle Scout, they have a great grade point average, they just float through life. It's not the way it is for kids with disabilities. Float through life. Another thing that I realized is conflict is not helpful. Here I was, and this isn't the first time that I was set off ready to go after the superintendent like this, but I didn't really like that. But I realized maybe too late, and if I could pass this on to anybody, is in the same way that a conflict at home is not healthy, ongoing conflict in school is not healthy. And I've been in situations where I've been part of the due process, it's a community due process. That is where it's because I can walk around. A due process is where essentially we sue the district. And I've seen it from both sides, from the parent side and from the school district side. And in the end, nobody really wins, because it's such a battle royale. And so I just want you to remember that. And I wish I had paid more attention to this. Because an ongoing conflict is not healthy for anybody, especially with kids. And I know it's easy to get angry and to get in that battle mode, but just recognize that. Another thing is that student success is ultimately based on the quality of the relationship between the school and the parent. And however that happens, it's critical. That means you all are the ones, as parents, we have to be the ones to kowtow. In order to avoid conflict or reduce conflict, we got to do it. Because we are going to be in that school, I mean, most of us will be in the school district for years and working with the same people for years. So we need to try as best as possible. And I know this isn't easy, and I'm the worst at it. Not only do I like to argue. Yeah, and I'm good at it too. But, you know, let's take a lesson from my daughter. And that is, you know, let's not make a scene, Dad. Why not? Another thing is that the more you know about special ed, the better equipped you'll be to advocate for your children, to be a support to your children, and also to provide education to schools. Don't assume they know everything. As you all know, that's not true. But the more you understand the special education law, the more you understand your rights and the children's rights, the more that you can be there as a protector of those rights. And I know there's a lot of, one of the things about special ed is that it is very involved legally. But I'm going to break it down into some very finite points today. So you can take these points and hopefully, you know, if you focus on these 6 things, you should be okay. Let's see. And cooperation takes work. You know, anybody been in a long-term relationship? Yeah. Okay, let me see. I'm going to talk a little bit about let me tell this other story. Has anybody heard of this pass the play rule? You all heard of that? Or you have to pass your classes in order to play sports or participate in marching band, anything, you've heard of that. Okay. My son has a very severe learning disability in math and his ADHD through the roof. And he was not passing math. And as a result, he could never go to any events because he wasn't passing math. Now, does that make sense to you? If you have a disability in an area and you're having trouble with that, are you being punished for that? Okay. The problem is that is a state law, as I come to find out. And there's nothing school districts here can do about it. No matter how often I showed up at the superintendent's office and the director of special ed, they all tell me the same story. Go to Austin. We can't do anything about it. And it's one of those things where it's like, there are decisions that are much bigger than the decisions that are made at the school that they have to comply with, that the school has to comply with. They have no choice in the matter. And if you know, it's one of these take your battles. That's a loser battle, unless you want to take Texas to the Supreme Court, which somebody who is independently wealthy, you mind, would you do that for us? Did you all know this? Prior to 1975, over 1 million children were systematically denied a public education based on their disability. A lot of us were alive in 1975. A lot of us weren't, you know, in young folks, but a lot of us were there. That was in our lifetime. 1 million kids were not allowed to go to the community school. They couldn't go to the school down the street. A lot of them, remember? They didn't get educated because families didn't want to send them off to a state school or one of those schools for wayward youths or whatever it was. But 1 million, think of that. That's larger than El Paso County. That's larger than a lot of, I mean, that's a medium-sized city in the United States. Everybody is systematically excluded from education. It's an embarrassment. It's kind of horrifying when we look back at it. Over 1 million kids, children. And you want to know kind of what these, look at the characteristics of these kids. Let me show you. Okay, I have it right here. This was a very important legal case, Mills versus DC Board of Education, 1970. I'm from Washington, D.C., so I'm particularly proud of this. And it was a class action lawsuit. We don't need to know the, but that's where a bunch of families get together and they say something has to be done here. And these are the kids that were legally excluded from going to school. Legally, there was nothing the families could do. Let's talk about Peter Mills. 12-year-old kid, Brett Elementary School. He was excluded from school in 1971 when he was in 4th grade because allegedly he was a behavior problem. He was a behavior problem. So he had some problem behavior, so they said, 4th grade, you're done, go away, you're expelled from school, and we, as a society, never have to educate you. We don't have to educate you because the law, there is no protection in the law. It was 1972. Here's another one. George Liddell, 8 years old, never attended public school. Never attended public school because his application was denied. Now, I don't know about you, but you have to apply to get into public school. I mean, I had to apply to get into my master's program, right? You have to apply to get into the military. You have to apply to get a job. But what is a public school? It's a public school. It is free and appropriate to everyone. So his application was denied because he was a child who allegedly had mild intellectual disability. So he was never in school. Never went to school, 8 years old. Application denied. This is 1972. No, don't raise your hand. I was alive. I was in school in 1972. And listen to show. Here's Stephen Cassidy, 8 years old, has been excluded from Taylor Elementary since 1969, summer 11. Well, that's his one legend. At that time, he was in 1st grade and allegedly had some slightly brain damage and hyperactive, and was excluded because he wandered around the class. Wandered around the class. But we're not talking about crazy, frothing at the mouth, burning the school down. We're talking about walking around, excluded. Parents had no rights. They had no right to go. They could go nowhere because it's like, they can do that. You can exclude these kids. Let me go back here. So what happened is, I'm going to point something out. 1975. That was not that long ago. A lot of people think that disability rights came during the civil rights movement, right? It started it started a long time ago, but really with Brown versus Board of Education and all that. It's not true. That's not true. It didn't come until 20-something years later. It was middle of the 70s during the disco era. That's when it was time to go, oh yeah, what about these kids? Oh, let's take a look at this. So it wasn't as though kids with disabilities were ever given a big priority along the line of our history. But in 1975, and I'm not saying politically, but this was under Gerald Ford, a family member who had an intellectual disability. And Gerald Ford said, I want to pass this. Republican did that. They wanted to, I'm apolitical on this point in 1975. And part of what, or the essence of IDEA, I'll talk about your 6 principles. And this is why I love special education. I love special ed. Now, it doesn't mean I love every special education teacher or every special education practice or how it's presented. Irrelevant. The intent of special education is absolutely pure. It's beautiful. And let me tell you what the 6 components are. These are the rights that are guaranteed to your children and guaranteed to you. I'll take one at a time. The first thing is this idea of child find. It's a very, let's say, it's a philanthropic idea. And Child Find says that the school district not only has to provide services and supports for kids with disabilities, they got to get off their tail and go and find out who's in the community. They got to know who are the kids out there who are going to be needing special education support. They have to take an active role in identifying, contacting, reaching out to kids and families of children with disabilities. It's a beautiful thing. And that opens up doors for early childhood programs, early childhood programs, and so forth. This is where we get pediatricians involved. This is where we get there's other support services, medical services, and so involved early on. That is because the law said, if they're in your district, they'll find them. They'll find them. The next is this idea of zero reject. Zero reject. Probably the most humanitarian wall we have on our books. Zero reject simply says, we can reject no children. The school district can reject every child will be accepted. Now, around the world, there are other countries who have special ed laws. And a lot of their laws look like ours. But what is the one thing that they left out? Zero reject. Because they always wanted to have, just in case you get that little, infield, that little amount, that one, and we got it, Not here. We can reject no one. And that's the theory of the law. And that's a foundation in our Constitution. Okay, so that's the beginning of special ed law. Those are the guarantees. We have, school districts have to take an active role. An active role, and school districts cannot reject anyone. Any kid with a disability. It doesn't matter what the disability is. Doesn't matter how fragile they are, what their needs are, no one can do these things. The next is this idea of non-discriminatory evaluation. Seems like a simple thought. And some of you have done some research or studied this. Is this going to drive you crazy? I get distracted sometimes, just a little bit. Oh, it's kind of weird. Non-discriminatory evaluation. What they used to do to help identify children with a disability is they would give them assessments. And there's a variety of different cases that came up in court, but here's the essence of it. So you get these kids that are coming over from Guatemala or El Salvador or Mexico or Ecuador or and how's their English? We would give them English IQ tests. You know, IQ tests are a test what's rattling around in your brain. And how well do you think they did? Okay, yeah, let me, you speak Vietnamese. You do? Oh, okay, let that. Well, I'm going to give you an IQ test in Vietnamese. How well are you going to do? I know I'm not going to do so well. I'm going to come out not. And we would do this routinely. In fact, we would do it so much that we were just packing special education classrooms with kids who didn't speak English. Anybody remember that guy, Leo Viscaglia? Anybody remember him? He was the hug guy. PBS used to have this thing, and everything, he was like one of the first Dr. Phils, but he was really out there. One of his things was hugging, and he would hug everybody. And his answer to everything was a hug. Well, that sounds good. He's hugging. And he was a professor at California State University. Brilliant guy. Brilliant guy. And he came from somewhere in, I think, Italy or Corsica, but he came to the United States. He did not speak any English. They gave him tests, and they put him in self-contained units with kids with intellectual disabilities. And he was in those first classes until he was in middle school or like early high school. He spent most of his education career in those classrooms. And one of the things he learned, which is so basic, so pure, so brilliant, is that hugs are good. You know, hugs are good, and you know, some kids are just so free with them. They just give you a hug for nothing. It's like, and he took that philosophy that he learned in the special education classes from his peers, and he created this whole therapy program. The next is, as you know, IEP. And I just want to, I know you're all familiar with the IEP or the IFSP, you know, but this is the, and you've probably heard this before, but I want to read it again. Individual education program based on your child's needs. Now, let's say I know that most of your parents, is that correct? I know your big assumption. Don't talk about that. It must be true. The IP is for the individual. It's for your children. It is not something that is developed based on what the school can provide. I know some of you have probably been through that or been through mediation. But one of the things that maybe you're not aware of is that the decisions made of the due process are often upheld if it winds up in the court systems. That the judges will generally accept the finding of a due process as law. So what we're doing is we're creating law when it comes to a due process, which is a great thing. And we actually have that written in special ed, one of the rights that we have as parents is that we can help advance special education law through this due process. But I just want to warn that it's a very emotional experience. I had to testify for 6 hours. 6 hours. And in the end, the parent didn't win. In the end, the parent lost. And it's like, okay, we didn't, as a district, we didn't win. The parent didn't, the kid didn't win. It was painful. It created, long-term, conflict. So in some cases, it's not worth it. In some cases it is. I mean, Daniel R., that came out of El Paso. Yeah. We all remember with Daniel R. That came from El Paso. That was a due process. We changed the law. We made things better for kids. And that's excellent. But I'd say most of the time, it doesn't end that way. It ends with a lot of heartache. It ends with a lot of frustration. If you win, you don't win. If you lose, everybody loses. Just something to think about. As I'm sitting there with my daughter going, "Don't embarrass me." And here's the funny part. You as parents, you are equal partners. You are equal partners. What does that mean? That means your ideas, your insights, your conclusions are just as important as special education teachers, as the general education teacher, as the principal, as the diagnostician or psychologist or the AD therapist, whatever. Your opinion is as valuable. It's legally as important too. So that means that what you have to say about your child should have the same impact as what a teacher says, or what an administrator says, or what a DIAC says. And you are an equal partner. Isn't that great? We're equal partners. Maybe we don't feel like it sometimes. But by law, we are. Okay. I told you that I do work at a university, so I guess I better present some research. There is also a component of this idea of equal participation, where parents are equal partners. And that is, it's a responsibility of the schools and special education teachers and to help prepare parents, to bring you into the fold, to educate you, to tell you what's going on, to inform you. And the question is, how well are we doing with that? And we did a research study. I know that some of you know Lawrence Ingalls and Helen Hammond. We've done this. We've got this ongoing research study where we looked at what is it like for parents. What is their first IEP meeting like? Anybody remember the first one? Yeah. Then you walk out just feeling great. I mean, maybe some of you did. according to our data, that's not necessarily true. So let me show you how we're doing here in El Paso with that. And if there's any, I'm not picking on teachers, I think I am a little bit, but then again, I'm a teacher, so I'm picking on myself. Let's look at this. This says, what was the first reaction you were notified the child might have a disability? According to the data, about half were prepared. So they knew something was going, something wasn't flowing right. Something was, there was some trouble. But 16% shock and disbelief, 14 were sad, 13 angry, frustrated, concerned, worried. So about half were completely unprepared for this idea. And I made a terrible mistake about 18 years ago. Anybody who's been a diet can relate to this. When you're in special ed, you get these huge case files, right? And you're working all the time. And I diagnosed a child, and back then, we call it child with mental retardation, intellectual disability. And I found that the child did seem to qualify as a child with intellectual disability. So we had the IEP meeting, and I was going over all my results, and I was sounding like this real expert, this real brilliant guy, and I was presenting my IQ data, and my this data, and that data, adaptive behavior, and blah, blah, blah. And then I stopped and I looked over, and I was looking at the mother, and it's like, all the color rushed out of her face. And, just started well up and started to cry. And I was like, what's going on? I'm a guy, I don't do what I was feeling. And it turns out she had no idea at all that her child had that level of disability. None whatsoever. Completely unprepared to do that. It's completely unprepared to do that. And here I was, breaking her heart and just mopping the floor with it, and you didn't realize it. I remember when my doctor told me that I had cancer. He did it in such a way where he sat me down and he showed me this and that. And, afterwards I was like, oh, okay, well, thanks, Doc. Appreciate it. The guy was helping me with cancer. But he did it in such a nice way. I think that sometimes in the day-to-day, we forget that these are going to be the more common, these are going to be the common responses. Some of you remember that first IEP meeting, you weren't sure what was going on. You got the bad news, or you got some troubling news, and it's painful. It is painful. Everything changes. Okay. So, someone in the Pope was like, Father, you must have forgiven me. He said, look at this. How did you feel when you entered the meeting? Okay, this is where every parent should walk in, here's a goal, and feel confident, and feel ready, and feel prepared, so they have someone on their side. Right? When it's going in, it's like, you got my back, I got your back, I'm ready for this. Okay, what do we have here? 69% were overwhelmed and anxious. Now, when you get overwhelmed and anxious, what happens to your brain? What happens to your mind when you get overwhelmed and anxious? Does this, right? Because your body starts kicking in that fight-flight mechanism. If you're getting overwhelmed and anxious, your body's saying, we probably have to get out of here. So it starts throwing blood, where? To your extremities away from your brain. Has anybody been in a meeting where you're just like, I wish I said that? Why didn't I stop the meeting and say this? The chances are you didn't because you were feeling anxious, and overwhelmed, and totally, confused. And your body was responding to that. That is not how parents continue feeling when they're going to an IEP. They should be prepared, they should be confident. And whose job is that? Really special education's job. It's really special education job. We get fooled, or we get, not fooled, I don't want to say that. A lot of times we're so afraid of not following the correct procedure that we have these little rules in place. And let me tell you one of the rules that is, and if anybody looking for the biscuit, well, sorry about this, I'll run out of the parking lot. You're allowed to know if at this next meeting there's going to be bad. You're allowed to know that. It's not, oh no, we have to have that discussion at our meeting because we all have to decide. No. Absolutely not. And this is special ed teachers or whoever, if you know that this meeting is going to be upsetting to a parent, contact them. Contact them. Or parent, you can ask for, an informal meeting. But it's up to us as special education teachers to prepare you. And I don't know, we're not doing so well in this area. Let's see what else. How would you describe your understanding of IEP terms and issues? About half said, yeah, they get it. And some, most, none. So how much that is true, I'm not sure, because to me it's like if you're overwhelmed and anxious, then maybe the understanding of the IEP process is not as clear as it should be. And that comes back to us. What else? All right. Well, I'll take this, before you do this, all right. Did you feel comfortable to voice your opinion? About half said felt comfortable. About half said that they felt like they had to agree. You ever felt that? At a meeting, and they're so convincing, aren't they? They come in, they got this, psychologist. Anyway, you're compelled to do them. The professionals, right? You're supposed to know what you're talking about. Teachers, they know what they should know what they're talking about. Remember, you don't have to agree with them. You're an equal partner. If it doesn't sound right, you don't have to agree. That's your right. You're not being opposition defiant. You are standing up for the rights of your child and for yourself. Had to agree. That always bothered me. Because if you're an equal partner, are you going to feel like that? Are you going to feel like you have to agree with the group? You're an equal partner. No. You're going to feel like your opinion matters as much as anyone's. You can agree, you can disagree. You have the freedom to do that. So this is an area that we... Okay, let's get ahead. Do you feel your job is receiving the help he or she needs from special education services? Most people said yes. And there's arguments in, I've heard a lot of parents go, my kids are not getting what they need. And I think that's probably true in a lot of cases, but I also want you to think, is there anything they are getting that they need? I mean, in a lot of ways it's easy to point to the negative, but is there anything that they are getting that is effective or beneficial? And chances are there are. That there is some good stuff going on. Anybody wonder what it's like to be a special ed teacher? Let me tell you. And again, I love special education. I love it. Now, being a special ed teacher is a hard job. Let me give you some of the reasons. First of all, we are, whether we say it or not, whether it comes across, most special ed teachers are deeply committed to kids with disabilities. I mean, they believe in the cause. They are committed to, a lot have either personal experience, or they have family members, or so forth, but they are committed to the cause. Maybe that doesn't come out sometimes, they're acting all teacher-like. But, in their hearts, they have chosen a difficult route. And a lot of the times, being a special education teacher is a lonely job. And it's a lonely job in the sense that you're part of the team, but you're not. Because as a special education teacher, as a special education teacher, my job is to be an advocate for my student. So that means if I have to tell you as a teacher, you need to try something different, I don't tell you. And how well do, I'm making generalizations here, but how well do adults take giving advice from peers? Or criticism? We're the worst. The thing is, sit there and criticize kids all day, not criticize, but you need to do this, you need to do that. But boy, someone does that to us, and we're like, what you say? So we're part of the team, but we're really on the other side. And another thing is that being the nature of being in special ed,